Welcome to Vendetta Sports Media. This is Excited Street, and today we are here with UFC 301, and we're going to split that with UFC St. Louis. So we're going to touch on both cards a little bit because neither is, some sensational card that's going to take an hour. So we're going to kind of split it up between the two, and we'll hit some final thoughts on both cards as well. But plan is, we're going to take the top three fights off UFC 301, and then we're going to hit the co-main on UFC St. Louis. Co-main and main event, for UFC St. Louis. So that is the plan for this week, and we will start with the recap of UFC 301. Main event, Alexandre Pantoja versus Steve Erceg. Relatively close fight. Pantoja gets his hand raised. Two judges scored it, 48-47 for him, another 49-46. Jerry, we can throw it over to you first. What'd you make of this fight as a whole, and do you have any opinions on the scorecards? Because I know there's been some discussion online about, is this a robbery? Is it not? Do you have a strong take on scores? If not, I don't really have a strong take on the scores, so if neither of you guys have one, don't feel like you have to make a hot take on the scorecards, but interested if you do.
I mean, 49-46 seemed like a stretch. This fight to me was 2-all going into that last round. It was a very, very even fight. So I was kind of just more surprised, not annoyed or upset with the result by any means. It was like more just surprised that there was a judge that did it 49-46 because I thought it was probably similar to the others, 48-47 to Pantoja. Relatively even. Erceg did really well on the feet, but when he went to the ground at times, it was kind of the rounds Pantoja won. And then that fifth round decided to take down Pantoja, and Pantoja quickly reversed it. I think that was a mistake on Erceg's part. Easier said than done. Obviously, we're not the ones in the ring at the time with all the crowd and the energy around you, but I think had he kept him on his feet, he might have been able to piece him up a bit, keep a distance, and maybe come out as the and new. But Pantoja did what he had to do to get the win, and can't knock any of the judges for any of that.
Yeah, I didn't see an issue. I know some people were calling like it a robbery. I kind of just thought it was a good decision. I will say I didn't. I wasn't like tapped in the whole fight because I was watching Canelo. So Canelo was on the big screen, and I'm not gonna lie, that was actually on the smaller screen. But I yeah, I thought it was a like a 48-47. The 49-46 from what I saw. Like if I think they were to reach one way, I can see it maybe them going like the Pantoja way. But yeah, overall I didn't have a problem. And then overall I did think it was the right call too because I thought Pantoja did enough to win that.
Yeah, I agree. I thought Pantoja won that fight, and in my opinion, Pantoja wins 2 rounds clearly. Erceg wins 1 round clearly, and then we have 2 rounds that are closer. So like, I'm never gonna be mad when you have 2 close rounds that get split down the middle, and then the guy who wins 2 rounds clearly ends up winning the fight. Like, to me, that's never something I'm gonna be mad about when the guy who wins 2 rounds very clearly, when you know the other rounds are close. I'm never gonna be mad when that guy wins the fight. And I do agree. I don't think Erceg made a smart decision to grapple in that fifth round, and I think that is a product of never fighting anyone that was better than him at grappling in his entire professional career. For I think that was his 13th fight or his 14th fight, and his fourth UFC fight. So it's not like this is a guy that's been around forever. He literally ran into the only guy that has ever been better at him at grappling. So for his entire career in that situation, he could have landed the takedown, won the round. This is the one fight that he couldn't do that in, and he did it. So I feel like it's more of a habit thing when you're used to being the better grappler, and all of a sudden you're not. But I do have to give Erceg some credit as well. Obviously, Pantoja is a great, great grappler, and I think a lot of guys get submitted in some of the scrambles that we're having. A lot of guys lose rounds by wider margins because they're not able to get up. So I give Erceg credit for what he showed in the grappling, and he showed a lot of good boxing as well. I don't think he's necessarily, oh, he lost this fight, he'll never be back. It's like Erceg's 28 and showed a lot of skills that I think translate against top 5 fighters in that division. So I don't think Erceg's a bum by any means for losing this fight. I don't think he's done. I think Erceg could still have a lengthy UFC career, and maybe he holds a belt in the future because, Pantoja's 34 and Erceg's 28. It's not like this is a scenario where Pantoja has to there's not like there's a scenario where he's got to now beat Pantoja. It's like maybe in 2 years Pantoja's done and Erceg's now the best fighter in the division. You never know.
Yeah, and I mean, going right off that point real quick, I think if Erceg had fought anybody else in that top 5 the way he fought Pantoja, he probably gets the win. I just think his stock is on the rise. I was surprised he only went up 1 spot, but I guess it does make kind of sense considering he did lose. So can't raise him up a bunch, but I think Erceg has a very bright future in this flyweight division, and he'll just get better and learn from this experience. It's not easy going to away territory, especially in Brazil, and fighting for the belt there, and only your 4th UFC fight.
Yeah, it's tough as well to move someone up in the rankings when they lose, but it's like I don't think anyone watched that fight and was like, I think he's at 9. So it's not like, oh yeah, he's the 9th best fighter. It's like, but it's tough to be like, oh, you lost close, so we're gonna put you at number 4. It's like I get why he didn't move up, but it's I think he's a lot better than his ranking suggests.
I think his record, even though in the short amount of fights, but I mean that fight showed it that at least he was deserving. We talked about it all through the lead up and stuff, of saying that obviously the ranking doesn't really prove that he deserves the championship fight. But we said, he had the talent, especially in that division with how some of the people that are in it. But yeah, I agree. I think if the fight showed anything, it's I think he could be fighting for a title very soon in the future.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that I kind of liked from the fallout of this fight is that Pantoja said, like, I kind of want to take some time off. Personally, I was like, oh, thank God. Because he was like, I want to take some time off. And I don't know about you guys, but I think that's good. Because we had this discussion several times about where this division stands. And it was simply hard to find a challenger for this specific date. And he wants to take some time off. I think that's a good idea because it allows the division to naturally grow another challenger. Do you guys feel a similar way, or do you think he should be back in the octagon sooner rather than later? Anthony, we can throw it over to you this time.
I think that's fair. Also, has he 48'd 3 times in a row now? Moreno, Royval, and
yeah, I don't remember what the scores for Moreno were, but Royval was 49.
Because, yeah, I mean, all it takes is for, like, he hasn't, I was tough to say. I don't want to say definitively beat someone, because I'm not saying, I think any of those were robberies, but I mean, he's continually getting at least 1 judge. I don't know, maybe 2, but 49, 48s against these guys. So even, we don't even have to find, a complete new person for him to face. I know maybe some fans want that. But Royval, Moreno, I guess by that time maybe Kai Kara and stuff too. But yeah, let the division naturally work itself out. And even if it's one of the guys he just faced, I mean, I would still be interested in one of those fights being, with a rematch or something.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it works out perfectly with getting some time for the division to fix itself. This is kind of what we have talked about before and what we're thinking could have happened maybe at middleweight with Izzy's reign at one point. Kamaru Usman was running through that division, and they finally gave someone else a shot. So it's one of those things that it's kind of let the division figure itself out. That's what we thought was happening with lightweight. Everything in lightweight just went to shits at 300, so didn't figure much out. But I like this. The guy I think is going to fight for the belt next, depending on how he does, most likely at UFC 304 in Manchester, is Muhammad Mokaev. That's the fight I want to see, him versus Alexandre Pantoja. I think he's the only guy who can match up with Pantoja on the ground and grappling, and has some good striking as well. So, but it also does what you said, Anthony, makes room for maybe a Brandon rematch, one of those 2 guys, or Kai Kara France. Who knows? Maybe Amir Albazi actually wins a fight that he should have won. instead of what happened in that KKF, right? Because I'm still convinced Kai Kara France won that. But long story short, I think it's the right decision for Pantoja to take some time off and see how the division reacts.
Yeah, I won't add too much because I agree with a lot of what both of you guys said. Just some names like Royval, Elbazi. I think Moreno also said he wants to take time off, so I doubt he gets a fight in before the next title fight. Maybe get Kai Kara France and Manel Kopp, like Mohamed Mokaev as well. There's a lot of guys that, we only need one or two of these guys to get booked up against one another, then all of a sudden you're a lot closer to a title fight. Alex Perez has even done some good things. I don't think he's necessarily one of. Oh, he's already booked against Ulanbekov. My bad. But there's a lot of guys in this division who you win one or two fights, I think you can make a strong case for them, depending on who exactly it is. And for Erceg, the fight that I actually like for Erceg is the Mokaev fight. I think that's a good fight for both parties. Erceg would get a chance against a guy with a lot of steam behind his name again, and I think he deserves something like that because of the performance he just put on. And for Mokaev, if you go out there and beat the guy who just fought a very close fight with the champion, I don't think there's any argument to be made against him getting a title fight. So that's kind of the fight I would like to see for Erceg. Do you guys have any opinions on where Erceg goes from here? Jerry, we can throw it over to you first.
I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing like a Manel Kopp, but we know Kopp fight weeks are very few and far in between. So we'll see what happens. That would be one. I like the Mokaev shout. Maybe because Alex Perez just beat Nicolau, so maybe a guy like that, even though Perez may want someone who's fresher or higher up, but one of those three ranked that 5, 6, 7 spot.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest flyweight matchmaker, so all three of those sound fine to me. But I do genuinely, I would like to see Erceg get a more favorable matchup, or at least a respectable matchup, because I wouldn't mind seeing him now. I think he's done enough to show that he should, needs to be in that title contenders area. So,
yeah, and I don't think to go off what you said, Anthony, I don't think the UFC is much for flyweight matchmaking, because I think that division might lead in when I see a fight get booked, I go, huh, why'd they do that? I think flyweight may be the most common that I have that reaction. So I think the flyweight matchmaking does kind of get swept under the rug for, if you're working on flyweight and featherweight, probably putting some more effort into featherweight. So I also think the UFC isn't the best at matchmaking that division anyway. So then let's swing it over to the co-main event, the return of Jose Aldo. He gets a decision win over Jonathan Martinez. And this one, no arguments at all. 30-27, Aldo, all three ways. I don't think there's very many people who scored it anything other than that. It was pretty clear Aldo won all three rounds. And in the third round, he almost got a finish. He had Martinez hurt doing the chicken dance, and he shoots a takedown and finishes with about a minute and a half of top control time rather than pushing for the finish. And he walks away from UFC 301 back in the winner's circle after taking some time away from MMA. What did you guys make of Aldo's performance? Anthony, I believe it is your turn to lead us off.
He's the GOAT. But no, I mean, it was awesome to see him get back in there and literally dominate in a way, or just take out one of the fresh prospects too. There's concerns specifically and not seeing him in a while and him being retired, of how he's going to look. And then kind of like, we talked about, Aldo's just so good at certain things in the octagon that you always know all the game plan is it's going to be executed. He's so talented. I will say, I think I sometimes people will be like, oh, like he didn't want to get the finish or whatever. And I've always thought that was weird, but I genuinely think, I don't know, I think he just was content with not finishing him and just, like you said, getting the takedown with, I think, was like 2 minutes left still on the clock too, maybe a little under 2, but and then yeah, just did top control and just was fine with getting a decision. But I thought that was and I thought that was interesting because yeah, I'm pretty sure he had him right there in the end of that third. So
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Jose Aldo looked far better than I kind of expected him to, especially against a guy who was coming off a 6-fight win streak and nice knockout in his last fight. Guy we talked about last week as being very, very dangerous, especially with the leg kicks. Aldo was superb in limiting those and checking them and kind of doing what we are used to Aldo doing in the octagon, working a guy for 3 rounds, and eventually got the takedown and kind of knew what he needed to do, similar to Alexandre Pantoja. Got on the ground, and once he got on top, he knew how to hold off and control it. So good job by Aldo. Love to see him get a win in his UFC return. Curious to see what happens next for him.
Yeah, and for Aldo, I was very impressed with like how sharp he was defensively, considering he was boxing, and the boxing defense was really, really good. And I don't think Martinez has elite boxing, so that wasn't necessarily a surprise. But I was very surprised by like his ability to check and defend leg kicks. Like that was something he's been very good at in MMA. So I guess maybe it shouldn't be a surprise, but you're out of the octagon and you're boxing, and maybe that skill regresses a little bit. It didn't at all. He looked outstanding defensively to the legs, body, and head. So he's a very hard guy to outstrike just based on what he can do defensively. And the guys who have outstruck him, I mean, Volkanovski, Holloway, McGregor. It's like a very specific archetype you have to have. Either guys that can really hurt you a lot when they hit you, or like Holloway outpaced them. And it's a tough archetype to beat as well because he's got great takedown defense. He's got one of the best like takedown defense ratings in the history of MMA and especially for a striker, like a guy that you want to go and try and grapple because you can't outstrike him. Like good luck taking him down. Like the broadcast laughed when Jonathan Martinez tried to take him down. They were like, "You're not getting Jose Aldo down," and he didn't even come close. So a lot of respect for Aldo and his performance and his speed as well. That's the last thing I'll add on his performance was how fast he was at 37. Was very impressive as well. So those were kind of what stood out to me. And yeah, I'm very interested to see what the UFC does with him moving forward. I don't really know exactly how they're going to go about matchmaking him. I thought Sandhagen would have been a good idea, but hours after that, or a couple days, I don't remember exactly when they booked that. Sandhagen was booked to fight Umar. So that's kind of off the table. Do you guys have any ideas for all those next fight? Anthony, we can swing it over to you first.
I haven't really looked into it at all. I can see, but Jerry, if you want to go first, I'll try to think of some names.
I mean, there's some guys who he's already fought. He's already fought Piotr Jan, fought Chito Vera. Don't need to see him fight Mirab again. So a Figueiredo fight would be intriguing to me. 2 Brazilians going at it. But the one that I like and kind of think would be just a fun fight, Henry Cejudo and Jose Aldo, 2 OGs, both who kind of retired and then came back, 2 former champions. And why not? It just seems like a good fight to have and all the historical background to it as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of the direction I was going as well, was Cejudo. And they were supposed to fight, I believe, and then Aldo wasn't able to leave Brazil because of COVID. And that became the Dominic Cruz and Henry Cejudo fight. That was originally supposed to be Aldo. So I think that's a good fight, and maybe they do Cruz as well for a similar reason. But I don't know. I just think Cruz is a little bit, I don't want to say more washed, but we're seeing the effects of aging a lot more with Cruz than we are with Aldo. So maybe that's not the direction they go. So I think Henry Cejudo is a pretty good call based off where we're at.
Yeah.
I like the Cejudo call. So I see Davison Figueiredo's name right there too. I think that one could be fun. Maybe a sneaky he gets his revenge on Marab, speed run another title, and then we'll see what happens too. That'd be fun. No, but all things aside, yeah, I think it's tough to that Corey name because I'm trying to think he's fought these other people, some of these other people, but yeah, that Corey would be cool, but they hate Corey for some reason. I don't know why they've already tried to book that Umar fight too, but I'd be fine, yeah, with the Cejudo fight. I'd be fine with any of these because, like I said, Jose looked so good, so he can, he's an all-time great, and he's one of the ones that I'm watching this fight anyway. So if it's gonna be at least against another striker or something to make it a little more entertaining, it's fine. But he, the way he neutralizes wrestlers, it still ends up being a bit of a striking match anyway. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only problem with Aldo against grapplers is sometimes they get like Marab just went full cage push. Like, all right, I'm not gonna hold him down, but if I pin him up against a cage, he's gonna struggle to get away. Like that's the one thing with Aldo and for that to be the one thing to be like, yeah, someone can hold you up against a cage and not take you down, but they'll hold you there. It's like, I mean, how much can I dock you for that?
Yeah, and don't worry, judges love that though. So it's insane.
Yeah, and for Martinez, I don't really have any strong takes about Martinez just because, like, when you look at the bantamweight division, the guys ranked in between that 10 and 15 spot, all really close. There's some really good guys unranked, so you can kind of book those guys however you want. It really doesn't matter, especially while you're coming off a loss. If he was coming off a win, it's a little bit of a different story, but I don't necessarily have any strong takes for Martinez. I don't think he's done by any means. I do think he needs to make some improvements in the hands in case someone can go out there and shut down the leg kicks. But, I mean, it's Aldo, and he's going to be better at shutting down the leg kicks than a lot of these guys. So I'm not out on Martinez, but I just don't have any strong takes on where he sits in the division right now.
Yeah, I don't know. The only one that like maybe because if they want to give him a test of a guy with good hands, again, Dominic Cruz. I know you already mentioned he's getting older and a little slower, but someone like that maybe. But really, there's so many options at that bottom third of this division.
Yeah. I mean, he has a special weapon. His best weapon that was kind of helping him in his last 3 fights. Beat some decent names and stuff, and he fortunately ran into one person that's the best at countering that, and then it exposed him a little bit in other areas, like you said, he needs to improve on. But yeah, I still think he could be one of those contenders maybe in a couple of years, but for right now, they should just be booking him. That was kind of his shot to maybe jump the rankings. So now I think he just got to do it the more traditional way. Start beating people, beating some numbers ranked around him and stuff. So,
yep, I agree with that. And like in his defense, like you said, he's got an elite weapon in those leg kicks, and you run into the guy who's best at checking them. Like it's a pretty tough matchup for him stylistically, so I can't be too mad at him. And then in the co-main, or not the co-main, my bad, in the featured bout, this surprised quite a few people, including myself. Anthony Smith goes out there, gets a win over Vitor Petrino. It wasn't the most the fight basically went, Anthony Smith kicks him in the leg a couple times. Vitor's leg buckles pretty badly. He shoots a bad takedown. He gets guillotined. Like, it's not the most complex fight I've ever seen, but Anthony Smith got a win, which is something a lot of people said he couldn't do, including myself. So hats off to Anthony Smith for finding ways to land those leg kicks and finding a way to land that guillotine. I got to give him some credit considering I feel like I've been hard on Anthony Smith about retiring and not looking good recently. So I got to give him his props now that he's got a good win under his belt. Jerry, what'd you make of Anthony Smith going out there and picking up a win at UFC 301?
Anthony Smith continues to be the gateholder of that top 10 of this division. You can't pass the Anthony Smith test, Vitor Petrino. You've got a long way to go still. But this fight just annoyed me because I did a parlay of all 13 or 14 fights, and this is the only one that didn't hit. So,
oh my god,
man!
Of all the fights, I looked back because I placed it, went away, saw the fights, checked it a couple days. It was like, oh, Anthony Smith of all people. But hey, props to him. Lionheart for a reason, keeps finding ways to get wins. I didn't have the volume on, so don't know if he called out Alexandre or Alex Pereira, but I'm sure he did. Oh, he didn't. He didn't call him out or anything. Hey, he's still confident he can beat the Brazilian, so we'll see what happens with Anthony Smith. But props to him. Good win, however sloppily it may have come, but we'll take it.
Yeah, it's like I was just saying, in true fashion, like it's tough. There's going to be 2 more matchups in the future. I'm like, he's probably not going to win. Probably not going to win. And there's that third matchup comes around, and it's like, oh no, it feels like one he's just going to win for some reason. And so yeah, it was tough. I thought I liked he did something Dustin Poirier wishes he could do, and that was finish jumping guillotine. But yeah, overall, I don't know. What do you say? It was a very short fight too. So
Yeah.
he just capitalized and got it done. So there's there's another win under his belt to honestly keep him in the UFC. He can go on another losing streak now, to be honest, is what that one win means. And then I'm sure in 2 or 3 fights they'll have another challenger that needs the Anthony Smith test.
Yeah, and the thing about Anthony Smith is like 1 win buys him 2 losses.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's tough as well because who the hell do you book Anthony Smith against? I mean, he's fought everybody. Like,
Yeah.
he keeps saying like, oh, they're giving me all these young up and comers. Anthony, you fought all the veterans. Like, it's kind of their only choice. I don't even like the light heavyweight division, especially in that portion of the rankings. Once you get past like the 8th spot and get into the 10s, and it gets sloppy quick. So I have no clue what they're going to do with Anthony Smith, but yeah, I think that 1 win buys him more fights in the UFC, which ultimately I think is what Smith wants. So, I mean, credit to him. He got what he was looking for. He extended the career, and gotta give him credit for that. But as far as future matchmaking goes, I don't have the slightest clue about who he's going to fight. Anthony Smith actually is another guy who every time they book him a fight, you go, huh, why'd they do that?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. But the only fight I kind of want to see him with, because we mentioned how I don't think he's going to get any top 10 shot against any of these guys. A lot of them seem booked up or he's lost to them. Give me another younger guy in Bogdan Gutskov. Give me the tattooed Anthony Smith versus the non-tattooed Anthony Smith. Let's see who wins Battle of the Baldies. Why not?
Yeah, that matchup would be hilarious without a doubt. I'm 100% fine with that just because it's funny.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think Anthony Smith's ever going to fight for the belt again unless he goes on an absolute tear at this point. I don't see that happening. I see too many dangerous guys in front of him. He deserves to still fight ranked opponents, so why not fight a guy who's up and coming in the rankings and see how it goes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, he fights all these kind of up and comers. It's like, why don't they ever give him like an old washed, like but kind of good,
Dominic
light heavyweight? Yeah, Dominic. Well, I saw he's booked. I was gonna say like even Volkan Ozdemir, and then I saw they had fought in 2018, back in 2018. So, but I was thinking him, or I'm not the biggest fan of Nikita Krylov. I think he is extremely beatable, but I don't know. UFC is gonna book him. We'll see. I'll be ready for whatever it is. It literally could be anyone.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
they could give Anthony Smith like someone like on just their debut, and I would be like, oh, okay, makes sense. And they could also give him someone ranks like, yeah,
they could give
exactly.
him Rocket after his
And I'd
lost
be like,
a year.
oh, okay, makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is the fun part about keeping Anthony Smith around, because it is just like wild card after wild card. Like, at a minimum, enjoy the ride while it's still going with Anthony Smith. So
we'll see him move up to heavyweight and get the John Jones rematch.
Yeah,
because John doesn't want to fight any legitimate heavyweights at the moment. So Anthony Smith's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe this time Anthony Smith will take the DQ if he gets kneed in the head.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's
All right.
such a weird.
Yeah. Sorry, I buffered for a second. Looking at the rest of the UFC 301, we won't go too deep into the rest of these fights. Let's hit some final thoughts for the remainder of the card. UFC 301, a lot to choose from because we did only talk about 3 fights. Jerry, we can throw it over to you first. Give us a final thought from UFC 301.
This is probably the easiest one, and then sorry if I'm taking one of yours, but Michel Pereira, the 4th fight, one happened right before Anthony Smith. 54 seconds. We kind of knew what he was going to do to Ihor. I want to see it's the fight next for Pereira that I'm intrigued about because I saw some stuff on Twitter and I was like, all right, Bo Nickel, Michel Pereira, winner gets to fight an actual ranked fighter. But yeah, why not? But he looked good. Love seeing someone throw a backflip into a flying ground knee, whatever the hell that was, and then picking you up and guillotining. So good win for him against a guy who's about to get smacked again coming up shortly.
Yeah, I think you could probably only get that type of win against a certain type of fighter. So that was it's super entertaining. It's kind of what we said he is. I'd say I got one. So the other fight I saw was the Barallo Craig fight, and I thought it was good. I thought we all kind of called that of how that would go down. I do want to say I did call a round 2 finish in that one when we were, and then my friend didn't get the bet in time, so that was unfortunate. But I thought it was good. I think he looked good again. I want to see him against a better opponent. Next fight for Barallo. My 2 quick questions were going to be, what happened? That Jack Shore fight was because of stoppage, right? So what led to it, and how? And I saw how bad that cut was, but
yeah, that was very strange. It was so leg kick basically split the front of his shin open. Then the doctor comes in, and I had the TV on mute, so excuse me if I'm missing a detail. This is just what I saw with my eyes. The doctor comes in and like sticks his finger inside of his cut and then stops the fight. And like it was pretty ridiculous. I don't think it was that bad of a cut. To me, it just looked like it was bleeding a lot, and then it was like running down the leg. So it like gets messy, but it wasn't like, I don't think that cut was like, oh, if we don't stop this, we may have to amputate his leg, or, this could get infected, or I don't really understand why they stopped that fight. But it was due to a leg kick, but the stoppage and the doctor coming in and sticking his finger in the cut was all very, very strange.
Yeah, I didn't see the fight, but I saw the reaction to the cut and all that. So it seemed weird. So thanks for asking that one, Anthony.
Yeah, I did see the doctor do that on social media, but that was funny. Yeah, because if he gets that to the next round, I mean, the cut man and stuff gets a whole chance at it, and it might not be an issue in the third, which still might be. My question: who was winning that fight before that?
Brito.
Yeah, it was okay.
Yeah, it's not like it was like the thing about Brito is if you're Jack Shore, ideally you try to submit him while he's gassed. So maybe they're upset that they didn't get the chance, thinking they had a cardio edge, but he wasn't winning very much of that fight. It was pretty one-sided.
I'm good.
All right. And my final thought, I'll go quick on 2 guys. Alessandro Costa versus Kevin Borjas. That was a fight we talked about short last week. Costa got the job done, looked very good doing so. And then another prospect, Mauricio Ruffy, knocked out Jamie Malarkey. Very slick striking. I'm not sure how he fits into the lightweight division. That was just his UFC debut. But very good performance over Jamie Malarkey, and that's a guy that I'll probably keep my eye out for. So 2 prospects on the early portions of the card that performed there.
One just bouncing off the Ruffy. One, be an entertaining fight. Him and Orlby? Yeah, that would be.
Orlby.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting one because saw a lot of memes about Orlby, but he seemed like he did really well in that fight. So
Orlby is a Twitter favorite. Partially because he's good at fighting, partially because he looks like he was born in a different century.
Yep.
So that's what happens, I guess.
Wins a win.
Yeah, he got the job done and he won. Credit to him for that. All right. Moving on over to UFC St. Louis. This card is kind of good and kind of bad. I could understand both perspectives. There are some fun fights on this card. Some fights that are not so good. And the main event is a heavyweight main event with Derrick Lewis, which some people absolutely despise. And I'm kind of in the middle ground on that heavyweight main event. And this is not necessarily one that I'm particularly excited for a main event. If this was 3 rounds in a co-main, I wouldn't be as upset. But 5-round main event, it's kind of like, what are we doing here? Derrick Lewis doesn't want to fight 5 rounds. I don't think so. With that being said, we have Derrick Lewis versus Rodrigo Nascimento. What do you guys make of this matchup? And Jerry, I believe it is your turn to go first.
I don't think this goes 5 rounds. I'll put it that way. Derrick Lewis will make sure it doesn't. He went 5 rounds against Almeida, and I think we were all shocked by that, considering his 5 previous fights were done in the first or second rounds, all by finishes one way or another. I'm expecting something like that. Nascimento has gone to decision his last 3 fights, so maybe that's his style. Is he'll just try and control it, not go for a finish, just wear you out. But never seen him in a 5-round fight, so we'll see how those extra 2 rounds affect him if it does go that far. Only loss for Nascimento, which is Derrick Lewis's favor, was a knockout by Chris Daukaus. So, as we know, Derrick Lewis, one of the most dangerous guys in the heavyweight division on his feet. Getting up there in age, but all it takes in this division is 1 punch power, and he still has plenty of that. So, should be interesting in that aspect to see if he can land or not.
Yeah. That's insane that Almeida couldn't finish him in 5 rounds. That just reminded me. And
That fight was
also,
awful.
I'm trying to think. Genuinely right now at the top of my head, I know Rodrigo. Like, I've seen that name multiple times. And I know that I've watched some of these fights, but I just can't remember them at all. So
that's the problem with Rodrigo Nascimento. I like that you brought that up.
Mm-hmm.
He wins fights by very close decision, and afterwards you go, yeah, I guess. It's like he doesn't do anything that makes you go, oh, this guy's really good. It's like, yeah, he won that fight, I guess. Like, that's one of my issues with him as a fighter, so I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, I think, well, that's good then, because I don't know. I mean, it's a Derrick Lewis main event. What are you gonna do? At least Jay, I would agree. I would imagine this fight doesn't go 5 rounds. Unless if Derrick Lewis wants to go 5 rounds back to back, that's insane. We got the rapture happening soon. That'd be pretty crazy. But so overall, yeah, we'll see. It's heavyweight, not my favorite class, but we'll see. We'll see if that knockout punch and he extends his knockout the record, right? I believe he has right now. So see if that gets extended or if Nascimento can actually get a finish.
Yeah, Derrick Lewis has that knockout record, and that's at 14. Matt Brown had 13, and he just retired. So Derrick Lewis got the heat off his back because Brown and Lewis were one's up, then another gets a knockout and ties it, and then someone else gets a knockout. They were kind of bouncing back and forth for a while, but with Matt Brown retired, Derrick Lewis is a little bit safer, but you obviously want to extend that record because that's a nice one to have with your name next to it. The one thing that I will say, just looking at what Rodrigo Nascimento has done in the UFC, and I don't think strength of schedule is the number one indicator of if a fighter is good or not, but this is what he's done. In the UFC, Don'Tale Mayes win, Chris Daukaus loss, Alan Badeau, no contest. I'll be honest, I don't remember who won that fight.
Nascimento won originally, and then he tested positive for something.
Okay, good to know. Alan Badeau's god-awful, though. Tanner Boser, Alir Latifi, Don'Tale Mayes. Those last 3 wins, all by decision. 2 of them split. I don't think one of those guys are good fighters. The best one's Chris Daukaus, and the second he became ranked, he started getting knocked out and dropped to light heavyweight. And that's the one he lost to. Dontel Mays, I don't think he's very good. He's just kind of your
Yeah.
sloppy heavyweight. He's just bigger and athletic than a lot of heavyweights. Alir Latifi was years past his sell-by date. Tanner Boser cut from the UFC, I believe. Or he walked away from his own volition, but he also dropped to light heavyweight. Alan Badeau is god-awful, right? So just that strength of competition. Now you're in a main event against Derrick Lewis. This is either going to be a boring fight where Nascimento doesn't want to throw, or maybe he throws and gets knocked out. So I'm taking Lewis, long story short, but the strength of the competition for Nascimento is like the massive red flag. So I'm taking Lewis, long story short.
Especially considering his last 3 finishes were all submissions. I mean, really, his last 5 finishes were all submissions, but it's going to be one where he either takes Derrick Lewis down and just lays on him for 25 minutes, or it's going to be a Lewis knockout. I don't think there's much in between.
And another thing that I do want to add that I've didn't mention, but I should mention, I think Derrick Lewis in his most recent fights has at least been taking things more seriously. And I know his record doesn't look great. There's a lot of red there. Strength of competition, much better as well. But like, for example, after the Spivak fight, like where he's just like looked like he quit and was getting tossed around, and that fight was in the middle of the night, and that was like a terrible performance. But then he comes out and knocks out Marcos Rogerio de Lima, and he comes in better shape.
Might have.
He lost to Jelton Almeida. He didn't. I think that's beneficial.
Yeah.
You were breaking up a little right there, but
oh, my bad.
I think no, you're good because I'd agree. I mean, the flying knee, crazy game plan. That was but I mean, definitely a genuinely smart game plan though. Like, who's expecting that? Especially if you could pull that off too. So I think I'd agree with you too. I think he's lost a little bit, but he had just getting older. He's 39, so I think it is good that he's taking things a little bit more seriously and trying to make up for stuff he never had to, just because of how the talent and you say the power and stuff he's always had. So
yeah, I mean, looking at that Almeida one as well, it was in Brazil, so that makes it even tougher. Almeida, they were pushing for him. We saw what happened to him against Curtis Blades after a while, so that loss doesn't look as good for Derrick Lewis now, but Curtis Blades is a dog in that division, so I'm curious. All Derrick Lewis fights are fun one way or another, whether it's the press conference, the Octagon interview after something. There's always something going on with Derrick Lewis fight weeks.
Yeah, and he's in front of the crowd. It's not like he's in the X where a couple of these fights have been that he lost. He's in front of the crowd, and I think that favors the fan favorite. So, moving over to the co-main, a trend today has been making this joke about matches that were made that just, what's this fight? And I think this is another one. Joaquin Buckley versus Nursulton Ruziboev. Buckley beats Vicente Luque and says, give me a ranked guy to put me in a main event at UFC St. Louis. We know Derrick Lewis is more than willing to take the co-main so he can fight for 3 rounds and not 5. And then they say, no, you can have the co-main. We're going to give you Nursulton Ruziboev, who fought the same day as Buckley when he knocked out Luque. He was also on that card, and he knocked out Cedriquez Dumas at 185 pounds. And now, which hasn't been that quick of a turnaround, we're running this back. We're booking them against each other, and Ruziboev is dropping from 185 to 170. This fight is low-key very important because Buckley's ranked, and Ruziboev is coming down to fight a ranked fighter after 2 wins in a different weight class. It's kind of a very important fight, but at the same time, also a very strange one. What do you guys make of this fight as a whole? Anthony, we can throw it over to you.
Yeah, I thought I was because after that one knockout, well, even though I think because he had lost to Kevin Holland before that, it was one of the first times I'd seen him fight someone else too. He gets that knockout, gets a bit of hype just off that, but continues to fight, multiple names, unranked names. Uh, loses some, wins more than he loses. But recently, I don't know. I thought, I was on board to see him actually fight, get a good name, get a ranked name. I was like, okay, he's deserving of that ranking a little bit. I think he has a bit of a fun personality too outside. I saw him partying in Vegas or at the hotel. I think it was before his fight and then after, I heard too. So I don't know. I was ready for him to get a little bit of a bigger test. And then, I don't know. Usually the UFC, they always seem to do this type of match out of nowhere.
See, I think this match is really intriguing on the Ruziboev side of things. Dude's 30 years old and already has 46 professional fights. He's won 10 straight by finishes in all of them. That's why I don't know why he moved down. That's my question. This dude's 6'5". He is going to be massive against the 5'10" Buckley. Same reach, though, which will be interesting. But, you have 2 first-round knockouts in your first 2 UFC fights at middleweight. I don't understand the logic of moving down a division to fight there. Because usually we think about weight cuts and all that, and you're moving up to make it easier. Moving down makes no sense to me. I'm wondering if Buckley was just so adamant about fighting at home in St. Louis that they're like, this guy said okay, so why not? Let's do it. And that's kind of what I think they did for this fight, because on paper it makes no sense whatsoever because, like you guys are saying, Buckley wants to fight a ranked opponent. He should be moving up in that direction. Instead, he gets a guy moving down a division. So I'm not sure which way this one goes because Buckley's always a stand-up striker. Ruziboev has 20 finishes by submission. That's a little scary for a striker.
Yeah, and I forgot to bring the odds up. The odds for the main event, for anyone curious, was Derrick Lewis around the minus 155 range. Rodrigo Nascimento plus 130. And what I find more interesting, Joaquin Buckley minus 135, Nursulton Ruziboev plus 114. Very, very closely aligned fight in a guy who, one, has much more UFC experience, fought much better levels of competition in the UFC. Ruziboev more overall experience, but welterweight debut, his 2 UFC fights. I'm not sure how good Bruno Ferreira is. I don't think Cedriquez Dumas is anything great. But the trend there is that both of them were first-round finishes. And in the Dumas fight, he poked Dumas in the eye and then hit him with an uppercut. I personally put an asterisk next to that one because he poked him in the eye. But, I don't think Ruziboev is anything great. I think his grappling kind of sucks. There was just, fights on the regional scene where he was fighting bums and he'd get him in a Kimura and they tap and I'm like, okay, you got the sub, but I'm not sure that you're good at grappling. Meanwhile, we've seen Buckley at least attempt takedowns and work to wrestle offensively in the UFC. He took Luque down and was doing ground and pound to Luque. I think we've seen him try and become more well-rounded off the back of his athleticism on the feet and his power on the feet and his boxing on the feet. At the same time, Ruziboev's massive. I think Buckley is the much better fighter, but the one thing Buckley has always struggled with is guys that are bigger than him. That's why he moved down from 185 to 170. That's why he lost to Imavov at 185, is because Imavov was longer and just played on the outside. So, I think this is a weird fight where Ruziboev might win. I'm probably going to pick Buckley, to be honest, just because I put a little bit more stock in his grappling and his cardio and that type of stuff. But, Ruziboev does kind of fit some things that have, in terms of length, Kevin Holland as well, much longer than Buckley. Imavov, much longer than Buckley. Chris Curtis, Buckley was winning that fight until Chris Curtis lands a big shot that knocks him out. So not a guy who's longer, but Buckley had a lot of success in that fight if you look at the overall. So I think this is a strange fight. I picked Buckley, but Ruziboev's kind of checks some boxes for things that Buckley struggles with.
Yeah, I want to go ahead, Anthony.
Oh, I was going to say, because you said this fight was in St. Louis, and that's where Buckley's from. So that would I could see that. That would make sense then, especially because is this got to be the highest he's ever a co-main? He's never co-mained or mained event before, has he?
I think he's been a co-main of like some real bad Apex fight cards that we've
Apex.
watched.
Yeah,
Okay, so
that Sensei Luque fight, he was the co-main to
Oh yeah.
Field and Furrow.
okay. Because I was just saying, I could see being in the hometown and getting a co-main could at least maybe shed some light on why this was booked for how strange of a matchup it is.
Just one final thought on this fight. Like as you were saying, Ruziboev has looked decent against bad opponents. I mentioned earlier his last 10 fights were all finishes. They are all in the first round as well. His last 4 losses, though, all decisions. So that shows me that he gasses as the fights go on. And if you're not getting out of there in the first round, it's a good chance you'll be able to get the win against him. So if Buckley can just kind of avoid the length early on and not just get rocked or taken down, I think Buckley probably has a better chin than Ruziboev. Clearly, he isn't fighting guys who are going after him as hard. So going to lean Buckley at the moment, but it's going to be intriguing to see how he deals with this massive size difference.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say on this fight is that Ruziboev's offensive approach against Dumas got very repetitive very quick. Like he was throwing like a lot of uppercuts and he was throwing a lot of the same shots and he was getting a lot closer to landing them in the early moments when Dumas was first seeing them. But then like the more he threw, the more Buckley was like, all right, I know exactly what he's throwing at me. And Dumas was just ducking under it and not getting hit and shelling up and not getting hit until he gets poked in the eye. So, like, I don't know if that happens again in this fight, but I just think, like, once we get past the 2.5 minute mark, Buckley's seeing everything he's got to throw, and then he starts to go down a cliff. But then again, the size. So we can go all day on the back and forth and explain why Buckley's better, but then it's, well, we never know with the size. So it gets kind of a strange fight in that regard.
Mm.
All right. Final thoughts for UFC St. Louis. Jerry, you want to lead us off on this one?
Sure. I have 2, both kind of on the main card, so nothing too crazy. Start with the fighter I'm most excited about to see. Robelis de España, the massive Cuban, is back at it, fighting Waldo Cortez Acosta. I'm assuming first round violence in this one, so it should just be a good heavyweight battle where someone is going to get flatlined. Where we might see the main event might be a little more calm. I don't think anyone's going to get out of here. He's 6'7", 6'8", and throwing spinning back kicks. Freak of nature. Then the other one, I always like Alex Caceres, one of the first fighters I enjoyed watching, mostly because of the old UFC 2 video game. He was just fun to play with, so anytime he fights, I'll be tuning into that.
That's funny because my main pick was going to be, I think that Sean Woodson, Alex Caceres is actually like a super fun matchup right there. I think that one should be fun. Of course, yeah, you said he's Cuban, right?
Yeah.
So and then he was 1-0. So and I know he had crazy knockouts and like a total fight time of however much in his first 4. And I actually like, as not being a heavyweight fan, Waldo Cortez Acosta, I actually kind of like. So I think in general that's another good matchup. I will pick, or I know Diego Ferreira has had fun fights, great scrambles and stuff. I like watching his wrestling, especially when someone is, highly skilled and capable of wrestling in their own right. Ferreira can get in some fun grappling matches. So that's one that I'm a bit excited for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with everything you guys said. I think Ferreira's a fun guy to watch. Rebecca's a good prospect. Ferreira coming off that big KO against Michael Johnson as well recently. Caceres, Woodson, 2 guys that are long and awkwardly built that usually have that advantage. Now they're going up against each other. Despain is a guy you have to watch out for based on his Taekwondo background. My number 1, though, is Carlos Ulberg. Like, this guy trains with Izzy and has always been like, oh, watch out for this guy. And the only loss in his career is when he gassed out beating someone up and then lost. And I think he's kind of fixed that, become a little bit more patient. Now he's more calculated. lands big shots, very technical, lots of power at light heavyweight. Menafield, toughest guy he's ever fought. Menafield, I believe, is 10 or 11, somewhere in that range. So Oldberg getting a chance to move up the rankings. I always think it's good when that light heavyweight division gets an injection of youth. We've talked about that a little bit already today with some of those guys in the top 10 that Anthony Smith has already fought all of them because they've all been there for 10 years. So when someone like Oldberg is knocking on the door, getting in the top 10, I like to give it credit. And then quickly on the prelims, Chase Hooper, Vaishev, Borshev, two guys that are like much-watched guys that are complete opposites. One pure grappler who's going to try and submit you. One pure striker who's going to try and take your head off. One of them, and they're both pretty bad against the other style. So it's kind of a wicked matchup.
I always like watching Chase Hooper fights because you just get to see literally what they've worked on in camp, what he's been practicing on. You get to really see like, oh, okay, he added a right hand. He's worked on one jab. Like it's truly you get to see like you're watching him try to get better in striking.
Yep. And then the other one, Terrence McKinney, Esteban Ribovic. Terrence McKinney, must-watch TV. That fight with Drew Dober is like
top notch.
Crazy. And Ribovic is a guy that I'm interested to see. Does he engage with that and make it a crazy fight, or does he, stay on the outside and try to get this to round 2 where Terrence McKinney eventually falls apart? So very interested to see how that fight plays out. And I think could be entertaining as well. And that's, I think, is a theme of this card is I think there's a lot of these fights that have a reason for interest. Like even if Caceres and Sean Woodson aren't going to be champions, there's a way you can look at this fight and go, it's a really interesting fight. And I think that's something that a lot of these fights have in common, even if they're not two guys that are ranked. So I think that all comes together to create a decent night of fights. So that is all we have for this week. UFC St. Louis. Next week, we will be back with some UFC St. Louis recap. I'll probably do a similar thing today where we talk about the fights that really stand out the most. And the card the week after has some decent fights. Edson Barbosa versus Lerone Murphy in the main event. We'll touch on that, and we'll touch on some other fights, but that card is pretty weak, so we're not going to do a deep dive recap into that one. So next week's show will probably be split similarly to how this week was, with half and half between the two. But thank you for watching, and make sure to go to vendettasportsmedia.com. All of our UFC written articles are up there, other sports as well, and that is where you can find this week's written preview for the full main card, and best bets will be up there as well. But thank you so much for tuning in to 8-Sided Freaks.